So thank you for the people that are joining us. Just again, this session is going to be recorded. So for those of you that are camera shy, please feel free to turn off your cameras. And we're going to be kicking it off. I'm actually going to roll it out now because we've got quite a nice amount of you on here. And I do tend to ramble on during the starting process. So I can see John smiling, which always is nice. So we are going to be interviewing Nuria from Mace Consulting. We're going to be running through some questions and some experiences that she's had to really carry on with our bid summer sessions of learning more. We have had some great speakers up until now. Nuria's going to be no different, and she's going to be very, very insightful for us. So, Nuria, I'm going to pass over to you. I mean, if we start off, do you want to give us a bit of an idea of where you're from and where you are at now?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I'll just get started then. So, for those who know me, Nuria Puig-Mas, and I grew up in Barcelona. I studied English and German, nothing to do with bids at the time. I've been lucky enough to be able to live and work in Europe, in Africa, in North America, in the Caribbean, and most recently with my teams as well in India and other places. As a trained translator, I started working in the construction industry because I wanted to learn about it, become a technical translator. And little did I know at the time that I found a fantastic mentor who saw my potential, saw that I could do more than translations and actually get to know the business. So they gave me the opportunity to start working in bids, literally, starting as a coordinator and working my way through the ladder. They gave me training, they supported me, they provided contract management, budgeting, general management, sector knowledge and whatever I needed. So I think that's something that I'm very proud of, and I'm very happy that I had that opportunity. And it's something that I like to transfer to my teams as well, in terms of giving people opportunities. You never know what jewels and what gems you're going to find in your teams and what hidden skills people have.
Yeah,
and obviously in all that time, so 20 years plus now, I've worked in construction bids in pretty much every sector. I've worked in project finance bids, and I must admit, the first time I was asked to work on a project finance bid, when you're talking about, a 25, 30-year concession, huge sums of money, very complex. Some of them take 2 to 3, 4 years to bid, by the time, from start to signing a contract. And it's always like, oh my God, can I do this? But actually, there's always been somebody that has said, yes, you can. And having that support is really, really important to whatever you do. So find allies, find people who you can trust, who you can share your concerns, and that's going to help you also progress careers. One of the things that I've also done is be on the other side. So some of the bids I've worked on, I've been able to actually then mobilize them and stay on the board for a number of months or for a year or two, which actually gives you a perspective of all the things we've promised and then what happens when you come to deliver them. So when people ask those questions like, well, I've been there, so I've done it, and I can speak with some confidence about whatever new methodology we're talking about. I've also been on the evaluation side. So when we submitted a bid for the Lima 2019 Pan American Games in 2017, being Spanish, obviously the company was looking for Spanish speakers, and it's like, oh, by the way, can you help us with this? And I was like, I've got a number of other things to do, but actually I'd love to do it. And I did negotiate with my boss that, can I spend 3 months working on this actually during operation? So I was on the evaluation panel when we procured the contractors to deliver the Olympic Village. And I helped with putting together PQQs, tenders, and then evaluating them. So again, it gave me a fantastic insight into, what the evaluators are looking for. And it's something that I'd like to share as well with the teams. That think about it. If you receive that piece of paper, what are you going to look for it? You're going to look for some statements that are going to be quite powerful, quite punchy. You don't want to go through pages and pages that, tiny writing, no spaces, because literally by the time you've read whether it's 2 or 3 or 15 of those tenders from different people, you just can't tell the difference. So how do you make a difference for an evaluator? Think about that. And the other thing that I've done in all these years is also, progressing through different markets, different sectors, but also being able to build teams and bring people together with different skill sets. There's always questions about, what you need in a big team, and what are the various different roles that people play in a team. Well, I've had people with the same title, but actually playing a very different role because they have very different skill sets. I've got bid managers who are brilliant at the organization side of it. They are proper project managers, and some of them have actually moved on to project management roles. I've got people who actually like the understanding the client. They're really good at the strategic side of it, of drawing from the SMEs and the technical experts what's going to make us different. I've got those who are amazing at writing and taking everything that's been said around into something that's really, really compelling. So even though they're all called bid managers, they all have different skill sets, and it's making sure that, particularly when I resource a bid, I know what the stakeholders have in terms of skills and how I match them with my team, or where I need additional resources when we have a gap.
Because that's a big thing, isn't it? And I know the thing that blows me away about you is you've worked as part of Work Winning with massive, larger, kind of multinational teams. Not to mention, so you've got a different, like you've just hit the nail on the head, with different skill sets. But to chuck against that, which every bid team faces, I think, with a skill set mix and an experience range, you need to chuck in your time differences, language barriers. I know that you're fluent in a lot of languages, but I would imagine that teams from other countries or other areas aren't. And the distance alone, I mean, how do you overcome issues when you are working as part of a multinational team? How do you bring the people together, and how do you combat the time difference and the language barriers, and also get the job done, I guess? Because that's the difficult thing, isn't it? How do you juggle all these balls and actually meet that one deadline? Because that's something that never changes with a bid, isn't it?
Indeed, that's quite a few questions in one, actually. So I'm gonna try and take one at a time. Let me know if I've missed any of it. In terms of working in multinational teams, yes, whether it's actually, sometimes it's even same language speaking joint ventures who have different ways of working. So you do have a cultural barrier regardless of whether they are from the same country and speak the same language or not. But I do love working in different cultural environments. And I think what's really important is being conscious and respectful of the way that people may think differently. People may not necessarily understand and interpret what you're saying in the same way. So there's a lot of, show me how you do it as well. I worked on a very large infrastructure project in Denmark, and I think a few people who are here in the audience worked on that as well, where we had a joint venture of people from France, Holland, Austria, Denmark, and us, the big team, were all coming from the UK. And yes, we had to play with all those elements. And sometimes somebody was trying to explain something technical. You'd read a draft and you go like, I'm really not getting what you're trying to say. And they would sketch it, they would draw it, or they would actually Google it and show me a picture of a particular piece of mechanics. And it's like, that's what I'm trying to say. And because they'd Googled that word wasn't the right translation in English. So then I had to go to one of our SMEs in England and go, this is what they're trying to say. How do you say that in English? Because, I've learned a lot and I love, learning, but I don't have a technical background. Therefore, I do have gaps and I need to know where I go to fill those gaps. So that's one of the areas, as I said, communication is really important. And sometimes you might use the same words, but they mean different things. So you just need to double check what people are saying. As you said, deadlines are deadlines and those don't change. I think in terms of time differences, it's being really conscious of where the team is based. So if you have a team that's in different places working on the same bid, what are the closest time differences? And it might sound logical, but if everyone sets up their different clocks so that you know what time is it in the other places, and I'm really mindful when you set up meetings that you're going to encroach somehow on somebody's early morning or late evening, and try to balance it. So, don't always have the meetings at 7 o'clock in the morning, or don't always have the meetings at 8 o'clock at night. And if it's my own team who are working, I've had team working in bits based in London, but working bits in Australia or in bits in Canada, then, well, if you're working in Canada, obviously you're going to work late. Therefore, I'm not expecting them to come to work at 9 o'clock. I'm expecting them to start at a reasonable time that will allow them to do their job.
Yeah.
Having said that, actually, we have also played with the time differences to our advantage. And having a team based in Australia, in Dubai, and in the US, we have actually worked around the clock, where somebody will start, whether it's writing something and it gets reviewed or copy edited in a different time zone, or it gets desktop published while we are sleeping, or the other way around. We might have graphics who work 24/7, or we use the fact that when our Dubai team is up on Fridays, the India team might pick something, or if we need something finished on a Sunday, we pass it back to the Dubai team to finish it. So, you have to be mindful of the challenges, but also work to make the most of it.
Yeah, I think this is the thing, isn't it? I think timescales are a big thing, and we have a lot of clients that are international clients, and it's exactly the same thing. So I guess, and you have an idea of these different clocks and different timescales that are set up, but it works, doesn't it?
It does.
And you've got to get on with each other. You can't work everyone to the bone, I think. And I guess during COVID, you've probably faced similar challenges with your own team at Mace. I mean, did you bring anything in, like structure or anything like that, while your team were working remotely? Because I guess it's all very well someone working down the road, but they may as well work on the other side of the planet when you can't see each other.
Yes, I think there's a lot to learn, because I had the majority of my team until COVID, pretty much in the office around me. And it was actually through last year that we've consolidated our team globally, and therefore now I have people reporting to me who are in a completely different geography, which was interesting, because I have friends who've worked in different kind of companies, and they said, well, actually, for them, working from home is not a difference, because their teams were already geographically dispersed, and therefore setting up a team meeting, you need to be mindful of what time zones they are. I think the things that we did for COVID is really accelerate our digital support. And I'm sure that everyone has used all sorts of portals, platforms, collaborative systems, but actually, probably as big professionals, we tend to use them more than other parts of the company. And so the way we work with them was probably a little bit more advanced. What we did at Mace was literally within 2 or 3 days of working from home, Teams was rolled out across the company, and we were really lucky because we were already testing it in the bid team. So we have people who are, very much into innovation and what's next and what can make our job easier. And we had already some knowledge. We were testing using Teams, and then because it was rolled out, now everyone finds it normal. Everyone's used to having video calls. What happened to Skype? Disappeared.
Yeah.
And SharePoint as well. Again, we used to have, like most people, probably everything saved on a U drive, hard drive, but everyone connected to. Now everyone's on SharePoint. We have kind of systems and processes on how you start a bid, how you set it up on SharePoint, so that everyone knows it's the same process, the same system, and it doesn't matter if you work on bid A today, on bid Z tomorrow, you'll know when to find everything because it's done in the same way.
Yeah. It's important for people to know, really, and I think it's nice that it wasn't a shock to the system when you work remotely. I know it was for me because I work in sales, and it was a huge shock that you can't sit, and I couldn't meet them for a coffee or give them a cuddle or shake someone's hand. So
there's an element of that.
Yeah,
It wasn't always easy. So we had the tools to do our job, but bidding is very much collaborating, and there's nothing that takes the face to face, particularly when you're talking about kickoff meetings, reviews, the final days, and we had to become a bit more creative about how we get the best of these kind of meetings. And there were a number of things with it. Realized that all of a sudden you can't be doing a meeting for 3 or 4 hours because people can't be watching at a screen. You lose them within half an hour to an hour. People are gone. Even if they are connected, they'll be doing something else. You lose their attention. So it's understanding how we set and run meetings better, how we facilitate them so that we are really getting what we need out of them. And if there is a point where you're just digressing too much, it's really being realistic and saying, actually, shall we adjourn and carry on later or tomorrow?
yeah,
We've started using, other collaboration tools like, Mural and others where you can actually scribble, because I think that's the piece that people miss the most. You are in a workshop and you want to stand up and be writing on a screen, on a board, on a flip chart, and that's when you start drawing, everyone's contribution. So, that's taken a little bit longer, but we got there now. We have the tools in place.
yeah.
But it's true that at the end of the day, in between lockdowns, whenever we managed to get back together, even if it was for a day to do a review, everyone was quite happy to get together again.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It's about kind of the human interaction side of things for all of us, regardless if you work in bids, if you work in marketing, if you work in a factory, whatever area that you work in or industry that you work in, it's important to have that human touch and that human feel. And I mean, one thing, Nuria, with you touch upon communication. That seems to be a real driving force for you, and especially in your role dealing with various dynamics of how you piece together a bid. I mean, how do you approach your bids? Do you have kind of like a one shoe fits all, or do you have this sounds like it could be for section A, B, and C? How do you go about it? What's the first thing that you look at?
Well, the first thing is actually we do have a very robust bid process. There, I must say, it's the same shoe doesn't fit all. You have to have a certain amount of flexibility to it. But actually, we developed this bid process as a bid team, so it's not something that I came or somebody came and said you must follow this process. So we brought obviously industry standards, best practice, and the experience of a lot of people who've been working on bids, and made it ours. So made it work for Mace, made it work for the need to be sometimes really agile. As I said, I've worked in construction bids that can take 2-3 months, 2 years, and you have a certain process. When you have all of a sudden a 5-day bid or a 2-week bid, you need to understand what's really, really critical and what are the areas that actually, you will do the best you can. But at the end of it, we do still have a process that is largely based on a number of gateways and governance that everyone is expecting us to go through. And actually, interesting enough, yesterday I went through our external quality audit on the bid process. So it's something that quite proud we have a process that works, that's been audited, that we can demonstrate the value that it brings. And I'm sure everyone will be familiar if I say that it starts with a fairly robust decision-making process. Is this a go, no go? Quite early. It starts with capture as early as you can. So it's not the surprise of here's a bid, do we bid or not? No, it's a bid that we've been working for a number of months. We know it was coming and we get the details. We get through then the formal decision-making process. And it's something that we have it on our intranet. We are running internal training on bidding 101 with our stakeholders so that they understand there is a process there. And I always say, Mace Consult is basically a project management company. So if I relate the bid management process to project management, all of a sudden people go, oh, I know what you mean. It's like you have client requirements, you have a time frame, you have resources, and an immovable deadline. it's the same as if you're running a project. And so that makes it easier to understand, but we do communicate it. When we kick off a bid, we tell them, this is the process we're going to follow. We're kicking it off. These are the roles and responsibilities of you, the bid lead, as the bid team, XYZ as the SMEs who are coming with their expertise. Are there any questions? Is everyone clear about what's expected of you? We talk them through what our review process is, so that we don't find ourselves in the situation when somebody will write, give it their best shot, go to a review, and then come up with a long list of comments, and they go like, but I've already told you, or I've done my best. And it's like, well, the process is you'll do your best, but we'll help you get it to an even better position. We're not here to criticize your job. You've done a really good job and you're really, really knowledgeable. So again, it's how you communicate, how you provide that constructive feedback in order to not discourage an author who's doing that in addition to their day job. Because if they put pens down and say, well, then over to you, well, we don't have the expertise to be able to write that unless we spend enough time interviewing them. So it's finding how to work with different people. It's those who, you're not going to hear from, but they're going to come back with a good piece of work, or those who you're not going to hear from and they'll come back with no goods. And knowing the ones you need to be tapping on their shoulder every other day saying, oh, by the way, how can I help you? Is there anything I can do to make your job easier? Because then that's going to make my job easier.
Yeah. So this is the thing, isn't it? It's about empowering. And I know that this is something that you're a real strong believer in, empowering your team to grow, to push them forward, to educate, to pass on that knowledge, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think that the team is empowered, and they are empowered to challenge the stakeholders in a positive way. For me, kind of my job is done if I go to a review and I get a stakeholder who'll say, before I open my mouth, oh, but Nuria would say, so what? Why are you saying this? What is the purpose? What is the evidence? And then I go like, right, I've trained them well.
Yeah.
But as I say,
it's
exactly. And the team know that they will be listened to. And obviously, like everyone else, we will have escalation processes if my bid managers feel that they're not getting enough traction, or the quality could be better than what it is. And then, yes, it's a matter of going and having separate conversations with the right people to say, look, I'm a bit concerned that, this is a really must win. And actually, I don't see enough time, enough resource, enough focus on it. What can we do? What do we need to do differently to actually get your team around the table to win that bid?
Yeah. I think that it's a bit... I know and every single bid team and bid professional that we speak to and we have a chat with, working as part of a team, and listen, I know this in my job and at the business that I work for, working as part of a team is really difficult. Like, it's not just, it can be a bit frustrating. It can be really, really difficult. I mean, we've got people that have joined us today from different bid backgrounds, from different industries. What kind of bit of advice would you give to anyone out there struggling to bring their team together or work together as a team and get the most out of a team environment?
I think the first thing I'd say is that you're not alone. And, at Mace, we have about 6,000 people, and some people are really, really good to work with in a bid context. Some people are incredibly good at what they do, but actually they're really not cut to bidding, or bid because they're not interested, because they don't understand it. And sometimes it takes them to go through a couple of bids and see the value we bring. So sometimes it's being resilient and being persistent on certain things. Just don't give up. But also trying to find allies. So if they're not in the bid team, find them elsewhere, because sometimes somebody else will give you a nugget of information that you'll go, oh, that's what I need for that person to actually click. And it may be completely different things for different people. You might get a really grumpy senior director at 2 o'clock because they haven't had breakfast and they haven't had lunch. So if you know that person doesn't have breakfast and likely they've been in meetings and they haven't had lunch, just go and get them a chocolate bar. It sometimes it's something as silly as that, or
Yeah.
sometimes it's knowing that, speak to whoever sits next to them, because if they've been in back-to-back meetings all day, or if it's whatever, end of month reporting, client, they're having difficult client meetings, you're not going to get their attention. So can you reprioritize certain parts of the bid so you can accommodate that? And all of a sudden, if you tell them, right, how about we do all of that and we carve out that time for you, and all of a sudden they'll go like, oh, that sounds brilliant, and then they help you. So there's a lot of communication and a lot of understanding different personalities in it.
Yeah, and I guess it's getting the weight of things up, and it's knowing your team, isn't it? I think that to bring a team together, you've got to know individual strengths and weaknesses, and where they're triggered by certain things or they're uncomfortable in certain environments. And I guess kind of what kind of would be the one thing that you would always advise your management team to do with their team? Do you have like a go-to? Is it to make friends and to get on a personal level with people? Is it to understand their strengths and weaknesses? How do you kind of coach your managers into going and looking after that sort of thing?
I think that the main thing is really to get to know your team, because that's when they will open up to you if they feel something's not going well. So if if they're concerned that if they flag an issue, they're going to be told off, or it's going to be escalated in a way that's going to make a lot of noise, a lot of people are going to be very cautious about it. If they know they can come to you and say, look, I think I might be struggling with that, what's your advice? Or they might not even be struggling and say, I'm in this situation, I'm not quite sure how to deal with it. If they're comfortable that they can come and talk to you, that's the first step.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a lot of my manager, he's exactly the same. He's an open book, so he's always got that open door policy. And I guess probably in bids, it's one area that every single bid team, you're under so much pressure, aren't you? It's a pressure cooker, because you're dealing with stuff that's gone on 6, maybe 8 weeks ago, and conversations that you weren't privy to. So you're always trying to fight and do the best thing. And I kind of love the direction that this conversation's gone, really. And it's the last question, and I always kind of do something for people to look back on. I mean, what's the one piece of advice that you probably would have asked yourself or told yourself, Nuria, when you first started out? Is there anything that you look back on and think, oh, I wish I knew that then?
There's probably a lot of things, but I think one of the areas that have allowed me to get to where I am now is to really take opportunities. So a lot of people will be great at planning their careers, and they know where they want to be in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years. But then there are others who may not really know. They're just happy doing what they're doing. And in that case, actually, if somebody comes to you with an opportunity, don't be afraid to say yes. Make the most of opportunities that come to you. They may not be at the right time, because that's something people always wonder. Oh, it sounds brilliant, but actually that's not the right time. Well, when I was working in this bid in Denmark, it was probably not the right time. I had 2 relatively young children, and I was spending 3 days a week away from home. But actually, for me, it was a fantastic opportunity. It was it was hard work, but it was lots of fun, and have really good memories of that bid. So it's understanding, where the opportunities are, not be afraid to take them, provided you have the right support from your land manager, your colleagues, your family, wherever you need it, to make it happen.
Nuria, I think that's amazing. And I love every time we do these and we talk to different bid professionals, you have an idea of where it's going to go. And even though we have our pre-interview conversations and chats and we have an idea, the end location is always so much further from where you think it's going to go. And I think you're really inspiring. And I think there's going to be a lot of people on here that think, do you know what? There's a lot of valid points, and there's a lot of food for thought as well there, I think. So thank you so much for answering the questions that I fired at you today, and coping very, very well with it as well, not being stressed. So this could be a little bit stressful though. So I'm going to open up our question and answers. So if anyone has any questions for Nuria, you can pop them into our chat box, which is a little speech bubble at the right-hand corner of your screen, or you can raise a hand and you can ask your question directly to Nuria. But let's all be really, really lovely, because there's usually very complex and complicated questions that get asked. So has anyone got any questions that they'd like to ask? Alistair, go for it, first one.
Hi Nuria, lovely to see you again. I'd just like to ask, what was the worst bid you worked on and what did you learn from it?
I think the worst bid I worked on must have been one where the client or the stakeholders were expecting that the bid team would do their entire bid for them. And that was actually, I've had some internal, but that was an external. So as a consultant, I went in and I'm relatively unfazed by challenges, and I've worked, as we said earlier, for very large companies on very different kinds of bids. This wasn't so much a complex bid. It was about earth moving. The scope wasn't very clear, but actually, yes, the client was expecting myself and the team to write a methodology to do their CVs, their case studies, and I was even asked to do the pricing for them. At which point I went like, I don't think I'm going to do that. So whilst I've always had a commercial side to my experience, and I can make sure that we follow governance, we involve our commercial team, I do challenge some of the approaches on pricing. I would not do the pricing on a bid myself. So it was just uncomfortable, I think, more than anything else. What did I learn? That probably at the very beginning, I should have laid out very clearly what the roles and responsibilities were and understand from that particular set of stakeholders what resources they had and who was going to do what.
Super, thank you.
And we've got another question. Thanks, Alistair. From John. Go for it, John. The floor is yours.
Cheers. Hi, Nuria. You've got a very demanding role. You've got a good team around you and a very ambitious organisation behind you. But even with situations like COVID and the pandemic and everything, how do you manage to maintain that strategic view and stay one step ahead?
I'd say it doesn't come without hard work, but it's also having people around. So whether it's the team or having good allies within the stakeholders and the broader team. I think one of the things that you might be aware is that earlier this year we moved from being a part of group services to being part of the engine of Consult. And actually, this has been really good because it means now I have a seat at the table at the property board at really high level, which allows me to have that day-to-day contact with all the directors. So that helps me with a strategic understanding of where the company's going, what their priorities are, and then be able to plan what I need to do in terms of focusing the team, focusing the skill set, recruitment. This year we're having massive growth in the US, so I'm currently recruiting a team. So almost halfway there. So that's how I keep that strategic side, and also trust that the team are delivering because the day-to-day bits. So I drive the team, I support them, develop them. I don't do that much hands-on bidding anymore. I'll be in reviews, I'll be in strategic kickoffs, etc. But it's understanding how to lift from the day-to-day and be able to understand the different, what's important to each bid, what's important to each client, and how to bring it together. I know some some other companies have got separate bid teams for different sectors. And what I really enjoy is the fact that I get to see what's going on across all sectors, and we can actually learn from each other as well.
Thanks, Nuria.
Great question, John. Thank you. Have we got any other questions that anyone would like to put to Nuria while we've got her? I think everyone's nice and quiet. I think we've answered a lot. So guys, thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time out. And thank you, Nuria, for being such a great sport. We have got our online community that I know a lot of you will be members. For those of you that aren't, there's a link in the chat. Again, back into the little speech bubble at the bottom right-hand corner. There's a link there that links to our online community. We are running these throughout the month of September. So we've got a couple more special guest speakers that are going to be joining us for different areas and different backgrounds. But if you've got any other questions, or that you think of any, we can put them to Nuria. We've got her involved with us now. She's not going anywhere. So we can put the questions to her and get her to answer any more questions.
Can I have a question?
Yes, of course you can.
Hey, hi, Nuria.
Hello.
So, Nuria, have you ever decided to drop a bid that you're working upon? Maybe 6 months, you spent all sweat and blood, and then you feel that, okay, now this is it. This is the breakout point. I'm not getting any inputs from maybe the leadership team.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you drop something, I mean that's a very bold step, and it takes a lot of guts, right?
It takes a lot, and I think that's probably because I've built the trust with the stakeholders. There will be bids where I'll start literally as we start the bid saying, "Are we really sure that we want to do it?" And I get the spiel of, this is really strategic, this is really important, and literally within a week I can see that there are no resources, nobody's turning up to meetings, and you start wondering, really, is this really strategic? So some of those, we give it a few days, and then every now and then we've had a call where we say, look, if you're really serious, where are your resources? How are we going to win it? Really, is this, because we're Mace? Well, we might win it because we're Mace, but actually we need to have a strategy to win it, a proper strategy. So if you can't, tell me what is it that we are doing about this client, there was one fairly recently where it was strategic, XYZ, it had been in the pipeline for a while. And when we got the bid and started seeing the questions, I went like, how well do we know this client? Oh, well, we used to work with them 10 years ago, but we're not working with them at the moment. Right. How did we know this bid was coming up? Well, we didn't. And you start asking these questions, or you get to a point where, you price it and realize that actually either you're going to be way over budget or you're not going to make any money. And then that's when it's the side conversations that go on. I talk to the bid lead, but I'd go to the accountable director, I go to the commercial director, I go to the legal director and go like, what do you think? And then between all of us go, well, maybe we should stop it. And it's frustrating when you've been working for a number of days, weeks, or months. But actually, if it's something where, you're not going to look good in front of a client because you've put a bid that's not your best, or you're going to lose money, then, a decision has to be made. And provided that doesn't happen every other day, if you choose your battles and when something's just not going to work, then people do listen.
Right, got it. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Have we got any other questions? Silence is golden. No. All good. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for Nuria. It's been a pleasure, and it's been so insightful having you on here. And it's really, really nice to see your point of view and where you're going. And it's really refreshing, actually, to hear someone that communicates well and listens, and really takes the lead when it comes to their team. It's good to hear, and hopefully something that we can grow towards, all of us on this call. So hopefully we'll see some of you at next week's session. We've got a lovely guy called Adam Redmond. He's joining us from Ernest Young. By all means, any questions, get on our community, ask away, ask for advice, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Thank you for coming, guys.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone. Bye now.
Later.